You, of all people, dare to criticize me, the next company president? You're 100 years too early for that. With those words, a beer was dumped over my head. I was utterly shocked. Never in my life did I expect someone would pour beer on me. But what came next was pure, fiery anger. I will never forgive this. I pulled out my phone and called a certain person. That's when everything began. My name is Marty, and I'm 35 years old. I currently live and work in Germany. While I'm a born and raised American, Germany has become my second home. I'd love to be fluent in other languages. I've been fascinated by foreign languages since middle school, so I decided to pursue a degree at a university specializing in linguistics. At the time, language exchange apps were trending, and I used one as both a learning tool and a way to connect with people. It was surprisingly fun, and I found myself getting deeply immersed in the app. Hello? That's how I first met Anna, a German resident. She would later become my wife. Hi. Nice to meet you. Anna, who was the same age as me and studying English, immediately caught my eye. She was so beautiful, I wondered if I was speaking to a living doll. We had similar values and found many things in common as we talked. Anna, I really enjoy talking to you. I'd love to chat more. Really? That makes me so happy. I feel the same way. We were both avid MLB fans, which was another strong connection. We helped each other learn languages and had occasional conversations in English, deepening our understanding of one another. Eventually, Anna traveled to America, and I got the chance to show her around. The first time I saw her in person, she was so adorable that I couldn't make eye contact for the first 5 minutes. We didn't like any particular team, so we went around from Fenway Park in Boston, but Anna was interested in many things and laughed a lot. Marty, these baseball-filled days have been amazing. I'm so happy, so I can't wait to come back. Please do. We can visit all the places we missed this time. I'll definitely come back. And Marty, you have to come to Germany next time. I'll show you around. It's so much fun. Accepting her invitation, I visited Germany, where Anna gave me a wonderful tour. With each meeting, my feelings for her grew stronger. Anna. The truth is I like you. Would you be my girlfriend? Anna looked surprised for a moment but soon smiled and nodded. Of course. I like you too, Marty. We maintained a long-distance relationship, and after graduating from university, I decided to move to Germany to be with her. Since then, I've lived in Germany, working at the Bayern Brewery, and Anna and I got married. Now, we live happily together with our daughter, Johanna. Alright, let's get to it. As usual, I sat down at my desk, went through my emails, and tackled the day's tasks. That's when the phone rang, a call from the chairman's office. Picking up the receiver, the chairman's secretary informed me, Mr. Dans would like to see you immediately. Sensing something serious, I hurried to the chairman's office. When I entered, Michael Dans, the chairman of Bayern Brewery, was looking at me with a grave expression. Thank you for coming, Marty. I need to discuss a serious issue. It's about the New York branch in America. Their sales have been plummeting. Even during the summer, which is usually the peak season. Compared to last year, the numbers are shockingly low. Mr. Dans furrowed his brow, his expression heavy. I could feel the weight of the situation. Even in summer? That's very concerning. Exactly. As you know, America is a critical market for Bayern Brewery. But with these sales figures, we may have to consider pulling out of the region entirely. I gasped for a moment at his words. Bayern Brewery had long held a strong market share in America. For that position to falter would be a significant blow to the company. That's why I'm asking for your help. I need your experience and insight. I want you to go to America, assess the situation on site, identify the root cause of the problem, and propose a solution. Without a second thought, I nodded. This was a critical moment for the company, and a strong sense of responsibility and mission swelled within me. Certainly, Mr. Dans. I'll go to America and conduct a thorough investigation. I'm counting on you, Marty. I have high expectations for your abilities. Please leave as soon as possible. I gave him a firm nod, offered a polite farewell, and left his office. As I walked back to my desk, I began mentally mapping out the steps I'd need to take for this important assignment. When I got home, Anna and Johanna were chatting happily in the living room. "Oh, you're home early today." "Daddy's home." Johanna ran over and hugged me as I greeted her with a warm smile. I took a deep breath, a bit nervous about what I was about to say. I have to go to America unexpectedly. There's some trouble at one of the branches. Anna looked surprised but quickly smiled gently. I understand. Don't worry about things here. I'll take care of everything. Just focus on your work and do your best. She wrapped her arms around me reassuringly. And Johanna beamed, patting my head. Go, Daddy. You've got this. Their warm words filled me with gratitude and determination, and I hugged them both tightly. Johanna and Anna's laughter filled the room. With their support behind me, I embarked on my journey to America. Returning to America for the first time in years felt nostalgic, but I wasted no time heading to Bayern Brewery's New York branch the next day. My official purpose there was listed as mid-career trainee orientation. Hello, I'm Marty, starting my training here today. When I told the receptionist, she promptly escorted me to the marketing department. Although I was there under the guise of a trainee, my real goal was to thoroughly analyze the branch's operations and identify the underlying issues. Upon arriving at the marketing department, I was introduced to May, the team leader. I'm May, the leader of the marketing team. It's nice to meet you. She is a woman in her 30s with a warm smile, her calm demeanor standing out. Nice to meet you too. I'm Marty. Thank you for having me. May then said, let me introduce you to the team, and led me to the center of the office floor. As she called everyone's attention, the employees gathered around, and I introduced myself. I'm Marty, and I'll be joining the marketing department for training. It's a pleasure to work with you all. Polite applause followed, but my attention was drawn to one man in particular. Because he showed blatant disdain for my greeting. He looked me up and down and then grinned a sarcastic smile. So, you're the new mid-career hire? I'm Jesse Smith. Marketing's pretty tough, you know. Think you can handle it? By the way, how old are you? Taken aback by his rude attitude, I answered calmly. I'm 35. At that, Jesse burst out laughing. Seriously? 35 and a mid-career trainee? That's insane. No way you're any good at this. While those around him stiffened at his words, May opened her mouth with a grim expression. Stop it, Jesse. That's extremely disrespectful to Marty. But instead of backing down, Jesse clicked his tongue and glared at her. Ha! Don't act all high and mighty just because you're the leader. His audacity left me stunned. It was hard to believe someone could behave so brazenly, even in a professional setting. Are you serious? I mutter this in my mind and watch the situation. Well, it's pretty much confirmed that a 35-year-old newbie is useless. Watch how I do things and learn from me. I joined as a new grad. And I'm really good at this. Jesse's tone was dripping with arrogance and self-importance. Even at first glance, it was obvious he was overconfident and convinced of his own superiority. He made no effort to hide his condescending attitude toward me. Deciding to stay calm, I chose not to let my emotions show and responded with composure. Thank you. I'll be sure to use you as a role model. I smiled politely, and Jesse, clearly satisfied with himself, nodded smugly before returning to his work. As I watched him walk away, I began to reflect. Was Jesse a central figure in the marketing department of this branch? If so, his behavior might be a significant factor negatively impacting the company's operations. This might be a more serious problem than I initially thought. I murmured internally, resolving to keep a close eye on him. As I settled into the New York branch, more of the internal dynamics began to reveal themselves. First, it was about May, the leader of the marketing department. The marketing team leader was the backbone of the department. She led meetings with precision, actively engaging team members and drawing out their ideas. "Mickey, do you have anything to add to this data? You're always so thorough, and your insights really help. If there's anything else you think we should include, let us know." Yes, I looked deeper into the trends for the next target demographic. Here's some data I think would be valuable. Team members actively contributed their thoughts, and May was constantly supporting them, creating a collaborative and effective environment. Her leadership and sharp questioning skills left a strong impression on me. On the other hand, Jesse, who claimed to be highly capable, was, "Are you kidding me?" I couldn't help but mutter under my breath as I observed him during a meeting. While serious discussions were underway, Jesse was hiding his phone behind a file, playing a game. He wore a serious expression to mask his actions but occasionally grinned when something in the game amused him. When bored, he'd whisper jokes to the colleague next to him, stifling laughter. Who cares about the data? Just wing it, and it'll work out. While the rest of the team engaged in meaningful discussions, Jesse's behavior remained immature and disruptive. It wasn't just frustrating, but it was giving me an actual headache. Wow, thank you. Marty, your reports are always so clear and easy to understand. May's bright smile as she reviewed my materials was a welcome change of pace. I totally agree. These are incredibly helpful. The data is accurate, too. The reports I prepared quickly gained a reputation in the marketing department for their clarity and precision. Hearing such positive feedback from May and my colleagues genuinely made me happy. Really? I'm glad to hear that. It's a relief. Soon, my reports became essential for project progress. And more colleagues began requesting my assistance with data collection and analysis. To me, research was the foundation of effective marketing. If the data was flawed, every subsequent action could end up being a waste of effort. That's why I prioritized gathering accurate, reliable data, even if it required significant time and effort. Jesse, however, didn't share that philosophy. Data doesn't matter. Just wing it. It'll work out somehow. He often said this with a grin. I suspected his approach would lead to failure eventually, and sure enough, one day, Jesse appeared at my desk. "Hey, old man trainee, make me a report, will you? I'm swamped over here. I'd love to help, but I'm already juggling a lot right now. If you can give me a bit of time to wrap up my current tasks, I can assist. When's the deadline for this report?" I thought my response struck a balance. But Jesse's face darkened with annoyance, and he raised his voice. "Come on, just get it done already." I said I'm in a rush, didn't I? Jesse, don't be unreasonable. Marty has his own work to do. But Jesse ignored me completely and shouted, "Just do it already." He slammed a USB onto my desk without a second thought. I couldn't help but let out a sigh, but May, looking genuinely apologetic, approached me. "I'm so sorry. Let me return this for you." May then tried to pick up the USB, and I stopped her. "It's fine. I'll try to adjust my workload and see if I can make time to handle it." "But," I told May, who lowered her eyebrows, how I really felt. "If I do it myself, I can guarantee it will be done properly." Jesse doesn't take data seriously. May looked surprised at my bluntness but eventually nodded in agreement. "You're right. Honestly, we've had so many problems with him." I wanted to ask her why Jesse had such a high and mighty attitude. But the dark circles under May's eyes and her evident exhaustion made me hold back. Instead, I reassured her once again and turned my focus to reviewing my tasks. After shuffling my schedule, I made time to create the report Jesse had demanded. "Jesse, here's the report." When I handed the materials I had prepared to Jesse, he looked dissatisfied with them as he skimmed through them. "This isn't good enough. I need it to match my style more." For some reason, he started saying with a fierce tone, so I felt a pang of frustration. I had put considerable effort into ensuring the report was accurate and thorough, so I can't afford to let him do anything strange. Adjusting the layout is fine, but making other changes might introduce errors. Jesse glared at me, his annoyance bubbling over. I said, "I'll just fix the layout." "Got it? All right," I replied, watching him stomp off with the report. I couldn't shake the feeling that something would go wrong. A few days later, we had a crucial meeting with an important client. "Let me present this to you," Jesse said confidently as he handed out the materials. However, as the clients began reviewing the report, their expressions darkened. "This data is incorrect. This report is completely useless." "What? Let me see that." May grabbed the report from Jesse's hands and examined it with me. I peek in with her, but it's all kinds of, well, almost a mess. I wanted to shout, "Wasn't it just the layout you were going to change?" but held my tongue. "This isn't the report I reviewed at all." May's voice was sharp with frustration, and the room grew tense. The clients, furious about the mistakes in such critical data, abruptly stood and left the meeting. Chaos erupted, and the situation spiraled rapidly out of control. Shortly after, May, Jesse, and I were summoned to the president's office. "What is going on here? Explain this mess immediately." I met the president for the first time since I came here. I believe his name was Terry Smith. His face is bright red, and he is furious. May began explaining the situation as calmly as she could, but Jesse interrupted, eager to shift the blame. "Listen, Dad. It was Marty's fault. He's the one who made the report. I just used it." "What? Dad?" I blurted out in shock, unable to contain my reaction. "That's right. My dad is Terry Smith, the president of the New York branch," Jesse declared, puffing out his chest, his already inflated ego swelling 100-fold. While I knew the branch president's name was Terry Smith, I never imagined they were father and son. It was such a common last name, after all. "With all due respect, Mr. Smith, the materials I prepared were accurate when I completed them." "Perhaps your son made some changes?" "What? No way." Mr. Smith observed the exchange with a cold, detached expression. "Do you have a problem with my son?" At that moment, I realized there was no saving this situation. The catastrophic decline in sales at the New York branch suddenly made perfect sense. Jesse, now emboldened by his father's support, sneered at me. "See? Even my dad says so. You better start doing your job properly." I could only stare at Jesse, incredulous. Mr. Smith began defending his son more fervently. "My Jesse is an elite employee. Couldn't you have covered for a small mistake like this?" The two of them, father and son, exuded unprofessionalism and arrogance, reinforcing the dysfunction that plagued the branch. Before Mr. Smith could continue, May interrupted sharply, her voice trembling with frustration. "I can't stay silent any longer. Time and again, you've ignored our well-prepared proposals and instead put your faith in Jesse's half-baked ideas." Mr. Smith looked stunned, and Jesse was momentarily speechless. May pressed on. "And look where it's gotten us. Sales have plummeted. We've worked tirelessly to find solutions, only for you to dismiss them. Instead, you've enabled Jesse to boss everyone around, hiding behind the excuse that he's the president's son." "Enough is enough." Her voice echoed through the room, trembling with anger and exhaustion. "I just want to do my job. But I can't keep cleaning up your son's messes. I've reached my limit. I quit. Seeing May start to cry, I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She must have really been at her limit, crying so hard that her body was shaking. It's okay, May. Everyone here knows how hard you've worked. We've all seen it and appreciate it. She wiped her tears and nodded slightly. But her sorrow was still evident. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face Mr. Smith and Jesse. Mr. Smith, it's time to address the real issue here. Jesse's behavior is not only unprofessional but outright destructive to this branch and its employees. If this continues, it won't just be this branch, and your actions could jeopardize the entire company. Mr. Smith's face turned red with anger as he snapped back. Are you saying my son is incompetent? Jesse is the heir to this branch. He's going to succeed me. How dare you question that? Jesse, riding the wave of his father's indignation, smirked and added, You, of all people, criticizing the next president? You're 100 years too early. With a flourish, Jesse grabbed a promotional beer can from the table, popped it open, and dumped its contents over my head without hesitation. The cold beer trickled down my hair and face as May let out a horrified gasp. How's that? This is how I handle things. Jesse laughed loudly, reveling in his childish display. I stood silently, making no move to wipe the beer away, my gaze locked coldly on Jesse and Mr. Smith. Take responsibility for your words. The low voice I uttered echoed, and the air in the room became even more tense. May rushed out of the room. She soon returned and in her hand was a towel she had brought from somewhere. Marty! Are you all right? That would be a shock to see something like this in front of her. There are tears in her eyes again. I gave her a reassuring smile and took the towel, wiping my hair and face. Thank you, May. And for the record, you're not the one who needs to quit. If anyone's leaving, it'll be these two. With the three of them dumbfounded, I took my phone out of my pocket and checked the time difference. Then, silently, I operated the app and began making video calls. Mr. Smith sneered, watching me make the call. What are you trying to do? Call for help? It's pointless. Jesse laughed along, mimicking his father's disdain. Only useless people quit. We're not going anywhere. You think the next president of this branch is going down here? Not a chance. The two of them continued to revel in their arrogance, completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation. May, however, wasn't hiding her exhaustion anymore. She looked completely worn out. I glanced briefly at them, then focused on the phone as the call connected. The face of Mr. Dans, the chairman of the company in Germany, appeared on the screen. Realizing I was still damp from the beer, I straightened my posture to maintain some professionalism. Mr. Dans, I apologize for disturbing you at this late hour. However, I need to report a serious issue here at the New York branch. Instantly, Mr. Smith and Jesse's laughter stopped. I adjusted the camera so that everyone in the room was visible on the call. As soon as Mr. Smith and Jesse recognized Mr. Dans on the screen, their expressions changed to ones of panic. A serious issue? Please explain, Marty. I succinctly outlined the events, from Jesse's unprofessional behavior to Mr. Smith's blatant favoritism, and detailed how these actions were contributing to the branch's poor performance. This is deeply troubling. Mr. Smith, I'll need an explanation from you. His horrifyingly cold gaze shot through Mr. Smith, and also through Jesse next to him. Mr. Smith's face went pale as he stammered. Well, you see, my son is still young, and everyone makes mistakes. Jesse tried to interject, but I continued firmly. Mr. Dans, I must recommend that we proceed with shutting down the New York branch. I calmly spoke to Mr. Dans. At this point, it is unsustainable and poses a risk to the company as a whole. May then fearfully raised one hand and opened her mouth. Excuse me, Mr. Dans. May I say something? I know it might not be my place, but. Of course. Don't be so afraid, Mr. Dans won't mind. I nodded to May, who looked worried, and Mr. Dans nodded with a kind expression. Please tell us your story. I want to hear. Encouraged, May nodded, though tears glistened in her eyes as she began. I'm May, the marketing team leader. We've all been working so hard, but the behavior of these two has made it unbearable. Not just for me but for everyone in the office. May shouts out her heart. Mr. Dans also has a serious expression on his face. Mr. Dans, we want to work in a supportive environment. My team is full of incredibly talented people who care about this company. They love the work. But they've been crushed by all this. We could have done so much more if our strategies had been implemented properly. Instead, there were people crying because their efforts were wasted. Mr. Danz's expression softened as he listened, nodding solemnly. Thank you, May. You've done exceptionally well under such circumstances, and I deeply appreciate your dedication. But Mr. Dans was silent for a few moments, then nodded. The decision is clear. The New York branch will be shut down. Mr. Smith, you and Jesse are terminated, effective immediately. Mr. Smith and Jesse's faces turned ghostly pale, their confidence crumbling as they stammered in protest. May's face falls painfully. Wait. This is too sudden. My son is still learning, he's not ready to be let go. Yeah. My dad promised I'd be the next president. You can't just take that away. I calmly listened to the out-of-touch excuses and evasions of responsibility coming from both of them. It's too late. You have destroyed our business, and what are you going to do about it? No, it's a misunderstanding. We did our best. We just did it a little wrong. I am so sorry. Jesse also expressed the same apology, but there was no sincerity in his words. They were just superficial, flimsy words. Jesse snatched my phone and began to plead with him, showing himself on the screen. I'm sorry. But you can't fire the next president. This is unfair. You can't do this to me. Jesse became more and more agitated, glaring at me and raising his voice. Certainly, it is unthinkable in a normal company to call the chairman directly and make a report. You? A mere mid-career hire? How could someone like you possibly connect with Mr. Dans and get us fired? This is ridiculous. Who do you think you are? At that moment, Mr. Dans let out a long, heavy sigh. One that carried an unmistakable tone of exasperation. Ignorance truly is a dangerous thing. You clearly don't understand the reality of the situation. He's far more than just a mid-career hire. I calmly retrieved my phone from Jesse and locked eyes with both him and Mr. Smith. Let me clarify, Marty is the CEO of Bayern Brewery's headquarters in Germany. He has full authority to terminate your employment and recommend the closure of the New York branch. And here you are, exposing your ignorance with such confidence. It's utterly shameful. The unexpected words already had the three of them standing on sticks. May's eyes are wide open and she is holding her mouth. Is this real? The words she muttered were probably speaking on behalf of the three people who were present. Hearing these words, Mr. Smith and his son were stunned for a while, but then they must have understood the meaning. Their faces turned pale and they were shaking. CEO? As the words reached his ears, Jesse fell to his knees and Mr. Smith was also stunned. Mr. Dans begins to talk about me through the screen. Marty has been my right-hand man for years. His work in Germany has been exemplary, consistently exceeding expectations. There isn't a single person at headquarters who doubts his ability or dedication. Jesse looked at me, his disbelief palpable. It was clear that he had never considered the possibility that the mid-career hire he had mocked could be someone so far above him. Mr. Dans added, "And one more thing, he is also my son." The room erupted in a collective gasp. Jesse and Mr. Smith were rendered speechless, and May's mouth fell open in disbelief. Everyone's reaction is as if they don't understand the reality of the situation. Your son. That's correct, Marty is my son-in-law. He fell in love with my daughter, moved to Germany, and built his career from the ground up. I've never coddled him, especially in business. His accomplishments are the result of his own talent, determination, and hard work. I was so touched by Mr. Danza's words, or rather my father-in-law's words, that I was filled with gratitude. My father-in-law was indeed strict, but I knew properly that he was thinking of me, and he is a truly loving person. I'm not usually one to show my emotions, but the back of my nose was aching. And you, Mr. Smith. You've spoiled your son and failed to teach him the responsibilities of leadership. If you wanted him to succeed, you should have demanded accountability and results instead of shielding him from the consequences of his actions. Mr. Smith's face turned red, and he tried to argue, but he was overwhelmed by Mr. Danza's sharp eyes and closed his mouth. Marty, you've done an exceptional job. Your efforts have not only upheld the values of this company but have also brought immense pride to our family. You are an irreplaceable asset to both. A genuine smile spread across my face. Then, with gratitude, I said a few words over the phone. Thank you, Dad. My father-in-law also smiled and nodded. I'll be waiting for you in Germany. I love you, son. I hung up the phone, sincerely satisfied. Thus, I left the president's office quietly with May, leaving Mr. Smith and Jesse sitting there. Soon after that, Mr. Smith and Jesse were fired. It was a natural result after all they had done. When the decision was made to withdraw from the New York branch, and the president's office was being cleaned out, May and several employees entered the president's office with great energy. Wait. Please, give us another chance. Her eyes are serious and the employees around her look determined. What do you mean? We'll rebuild this branch, give us 2 years. Just 2 years, and I promise we'll turn things around. I was surprised, but at the same time struck by the strength of her will. Rather than abandoning the New York branch, they would rebuild it. These people can do it. That's what I thought. After deciding to give the New York branch a chance at recovery, I immediately called my father-in-law to discuss the matter. Having already recommended the branch's closure, and knowing Mr. Danza's firm stance, I was nervous about bringing it up. All right, let's give it a shot, he said unexpectedly, his tone calm and decisive. To begin with, submit a thorough plan first. The employees who endured such tyranny are bound to unleash their potential now that those two are gone. There was a trace of amusement in his voice, which made me smile a little. After ending the call, I turned to May and her team. All right. You've got 2 years. Submit a detailed recovery plan first, and stay in close communication with me throughout. Let's make this work. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you so much. After that, May and I worked hard together to rebuild the New York branch. We had online meetings in Germany and New York and actively held meetings. We revamped the marketing approach, strengthened team dynamics, and crafted meticulous plans for growth. I frequently traveled to New York to provide on-the-ground support. While May demonstrated incredible leadership, rallying her team with unmatched determination. We did it. We actually did it. 2 years later, the New York branch achieved a remarkable turnaround, returning to profitability. May and I were pleased with the results together, and the branch office was successfully rebuilt. I'm really glad I believed in you guys. Thank you for believing in us, too. At that time, everyone in the room was crying. Including me, of course. Thus, the German headquarters and the New York branch formed an even stronger bond, and they are now moving forward together into the future. When I reported to my father-in-law that the branch, which had been in such a depressed state, had successfully turned profitable, he was very pleased. Oh, I see. That's really good to hear. The New York branch is back on its feet, thanks to May and the rest of the team. My father-in-law smiled and took a sip of his beer. Don't sell yourself short. The results came because you believed in them. That's what makes you my son. Business, like life, is built on trust. Raising my beer, I nodded, filled with gratitude. And we couldn't have succeeded without your support, Dad. Thank you. I firmly expressed my gratitude with all the strength I have in my handshake. He used his other hand to gently pat my head. We're family. We support each other no matter what. Isn't that right? And always will be, he said with a playful wink. I nodded deeply and was grateful to have met someone I could respect as a father and a human being. With Anna, Johanna, and my father-in-law, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together as a family. Absolutely. We raised our glasses again, toasting to an even brighter future ahead. Clean up properly before you leave, you incompetent. Adam, an arrogant and conceited young employee from a client company, stood before me. He had the audacity to insult me, the president of my own company, by calling me incompetent. In all my years of work, I had never been treated with such blatant disrespect. Well, if that's how he wants to play, I have my own way of handling things. Alright then, the $300 million contract is off. What? Hearing the word $300 million, Adam showed no sign of concern and continued to sneer, saying, "You're just a low-level employee." But his arrogance will only last for now. I'll make sure to turn that conceited attitude of his completely around. He'll come to realize that making me angry is the most terrifying mistake he could have made. By the time regret sets in, it will already be too late. My name is Richard Sullivan, 55 years old. I'm the president of Y Corporation, a major food manufacturing company. I first got interested in food production during high school, while working part-time at the company I now lead. After graduating, I joined Y Corporation full-time. I devoted myself to my job, gaining both operational knowledge and management skills along the way. By the time I turned 25, I became the youngest department manager in Y Corporation's history. I continued to work relentlessly, earning recognition from the higher-ups, and 25 years after joining the company, I became its president. I took on the role in my mid-40s, but the path forward was far from smooth. Some employees, jealous of my promotion, spread false rumors and talked behind my back. While many might have given up in such a situation, my upbringing gave me the resilience to overcome it. I lost my parents in an accident when I was 3 and was raised by relatives. At that time, I endured mockery and bullying for not having parents but dismissed it as trivial and ignored it. Those experiences strengthened my resolve and shaped the person I am today, a president leading a major corporation. A meeting with O Corporation is scheduled for next week, isn't it? Yes, the meeting is set for 10 a.m. 1 week from now, and 2 representatives from O Corporation are expected to attend. 2 representatives? Will the president, Ms. Grant, not be joining them? We've been informed that Ms. Grant is on an overseas business trip and won't be able to attend this time. Spending so much time preparing for this only to have her skip it for an overseas trip. This deal is far more critical than any we've had before. And without her, it raises some concerns. O Corporation is a rapidly growing food manufacturer that has seen remarkable success over the last 3 years. Its president, Olivia Grant, is a skilled and highly regarded female executive in the industry. For us, collaborating with O Corporation is vital for future growth and expansion. However, given their smaller size, O Corporation has far more to lose if the deal fails. That's why I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about only 2 representatives attending such an important meeting. Before the meeting, I plan to visit O Corporation. What does my schedule look like? The earliest available slot would be the day after tomorrow. However, Ms. Grant will still be away. Are you sure you'd like to proceed? I'm familiar with Ms. Grant, and we can meet anytime. What's more pressing is meeting their representatives to ensure they can handle such a crucial deal without her. Understood. I'll inform them you'll be visiting the day after tomorrow. After arranging the appointment, I set off for O Corporation 2 days later with my secretary, Julia. This is my first visit here, but it's even bigger than I imagined. Since Ms. Grant took charge, the company has been growing at an incredible pace. Their growth was evident. The interior was clean, equipped with state-of-the-art facilities, and the employees radiated enthusiasm. Just as I was thinking that we couldn't afford to fall behind, a man's angry shouting echoed from the back of the building. Julia also seemed concerned, but the employees of O Corporation didn't even flinch, as if they were used to it. The shouting continued unabated. When I started heading toward the source of the commotion, Julia looked worried and said, "We should stay out of this." However, having heard it, I couldn't just walk away. If this turned out to be a serious issue, leaving it unresolved now could lead to major problems later. This wasn't just a hunch. It was a gut feeling honed by years of experience as a president. I turned to Julia and said, "Wait here for me," before heading toward the source of the noise alone. As I got closer, the man's shouting grew louder. I could also hear the sound of something being violently broken. Finally, I reached a room. "It's coming from here." The sign on the door read storage room. The shouting was undoubtedly coming from inside. I placed my hand on the doorknob and slowly opened the door. Inside, I saw a young man in a suit, standing alone. "What are you doing here?" The moment he heard my voice, he turned sharply and glared at me with piercing eyes. "Huh? Who the hell are you? You've got no business barging in here." It was clear that the shouting everyone in the hall had heard was coming from him. "Hey, didn't you hear me? I said get the hell out. I can't do that." Your voice carried all the way to the lobby. "Huh? Who do you think you are?" Clearly displeased by my response, the man stormed over and grabbed me by the collar. "You're not even part of this company, are you?" "I don't care who you are, old man, but don't stick your nose in my business. If you keep running your mouth, I'll deal with you right here and now." Just then, his phone rang from his chest pocket. Clicking his tongue in irritation, he let go of my collar and stormed out of the storage room. As he left, I caught a glimpse of his name tag, and it read Adam. I looked around the room and saw items scattered across the floor, likely knocked off the shelves in a fit of rage. So, that was the source of the loud noises earlier. Still, I looked around, thinking that he had certainly caused quite a mess. Judging by the scene, Adam must have been venting his frustrations on the objects in the room. I stepped out of the storage room and informed a nearby employee, "The room is a mess. Please let the person in charge know to take care of it." Then I returned to Julia, who was waiting for me. "Mr. Sullivan, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "That's good to hear. I've just been informed that the operations manager, Matthew, will be here shortly." "I see." Today, I was scheduled to be shown around by Matthew in place of Ms. Grant. "Thank you for waiting," Matthew said as he hurried over. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." With Matthew's thorough guidance, I could see the difference between O Corporation and my company. He explained everything from their daily operations and employee training methods to their state-of-the-art facilities. As expected of a company at the forefront of the industry. I've learned a lot today and found many practices we could adopt for our own company. "Thank you," I said sincerely, and Matthew beamed with pride at my words. However, there was one question I couldn't ignore. About the upcoming deal, Ms. Grant won't be attending, and I've been told it will be handled by just 2 representatives. Are you confident everything will go smoothly without her? This deal is crucial for both of our companies. Matthew looked genuinely surprised. "Is that so?" he said, as if hearing this for the first time. He explained that the operations department hadn't been involved in this particular deal and that he didn't know much about it. "One more thing. Could you tell me about an employee named Adam?" "Of course. Adam is one of our brightest talents and a key figure in the future of O Corporation, Matthew answered enthusiastically. I couldn't believe my ears. That employee, Adam. That arrogant and violent man is supposed to be a future leader of O Corporation? Matthew looked puzzled by my skeptical expression. It was at that moment that Julia spoke up. Mr. Sullivan, it's almost time for your next meeting. We should head back. Is it that late already? Well, I suppose this visit was productive enough. Thank you for your time, Matthew. Please give my regards to Ms. Grant. It seemed the incident with Adam had taken up more time than I anticipated. As expected, I left O Corporation that day without meeting the representatives. On the drive back to Y Corporation, I couldn't help but wonder if that man Adam was one of the representatives for the upcoming deal. We might need to reconsider the whole thing. But surely that couldn't be the case. No company would entrust such an important deal to someone like him. A few days later, the day of the deal finally arrived. From our side, there were 4 of us, myself, our department head, Cody, the project lead, George, and my secretary, Julia. From O Corporation, there were supposed to be 2 representatives, as Julia had mentioned. But when we arrived, only one representative, Eric, was present. Eric repeatedly bowed toward us, saying, "I'm terribly sorry," while trying to call the other representative. However, there was no sign of the call going through. We should take a short break. During that time, contact your office for instructions. I have other commitments, so I can't wait here indefinitely. Leaving the meeting room, I headed toward the restroom. Then, near the restroom, I saw a familiar figure. It was Adam, the man I had clashed with during my visit to O Corporation. "Ha! What's that old man doing here?" he sneered, approaching me with a smirk. "Hey, old man. If you're here to clean, get on with it." Unbelievably, he was ordering me to clean the restroom. What, you can't handle cleaning the restroom? Well, I don't care if your cheap suit gets dirty. Hurry up and get it done. Adam then stepped into the restroom and quickly returned holding a toilet brush. "Here, take this," he shouted, tossing the brush at me. I narrowly avoided being hit. That's dangerous. What if it hit me and caused an injury? Injury? Like I care what happens to an old man on his last legs. Just pick it up and start cleaning. He spat, laughing as he walked away. I glared at his back, stunned by his outrageous behavior. If Adam was here at Y Corporation, could it really mean he was the missing representative for today's deal? If that's the case, a sense of unease washed over me. When I returned to the meeting room, my worst fears were confirmed. Adam was indeed the second representative. This is the worst. When I muttered under my breath, Adam noticed me. He slowly stood up and approached me, grinning maliciously. Without warning, he splashed his coffee all over me. "Clean it up before you leave, you incompetent old man." The people in the room went pale with his words. Eric frantically urged Adam to apologize, but Adam simply scoffed, saying, "Why would I do that?" and looked at me with mocking disdain. At this point, I had reached my limit. "All right, the $300 million deal is off." "What?" Adam was stunned, unable to process what I had just said. "You didn't hear me?" "I'll say it again. The $300 million deal is canceled." "Huh? What are you talking about, old man? Why does a low-level employee like you think you can cancel the deal? Only those who matter have a place here." Even now, Adam couldn't grasp the situation. Suddenly, Eric shouted, "You idiot," at Adam. Angered by being called an idiot, Adam raised his voice, revealing his frustration. "Who are you calling an idiot?" Then, right there in the middle of an important deal, Adam and Eric began arguing. As I watched the scene unfold, wiping my head with the towel Julia had handed me, Eric suddenly turned to me and declared, this man is Mr. Sullivan, the president of all 20 companies under the Y Group." "What?" The moment those words registered, Adam froze in place. "I'm so sorry," and bowed deeply. All of his previous arrogance vanished in an instant. Adam pressed his forehead to the floor, bowing deeply in an over-the-top display of apology. "What about me strikes you as incompetent? Please, enlighten me for future reference." "No, well. And while we're at it, you grabbed me by the collar once before, didn't you? Care to explain what prompted that? Was it because you thought I was incompetent?" Adam could only tremble, unable to utter a word. "This is a waste of my time. Naturally, the deal is off. And as you can see, I can't continue working in a coffee-stained suit." I heard later that Adam remained in his humiliating bow even after I left. Or rather, he was too paralyzed to stand back up. A few days after the cancellation, I received a phone call. "It's been a while, Mr. Sullivan." It was Ms. Grant. Originally, Ms. Grant was supposed to attend the meeting herself, but due to an overseas trip, she was unable to be there. I deeply apologize for the incident the other day. It was unacceptable that I wasn't present for such an important deal. And Adam's behavior. I'm truly sorry. Your absence was understandable. An overseas trip overlapping with the deal couldn't be helped. However, choosing the right people to represent you in your absence is something that needs serious consideration. You're absolutely right. It seemed she had already been informed about the events from Eric. The future of O Corporation, you said? If you truly believe that, then I must tell you, your company has no future. That's harsh, but I understand. I don't say this lightly, but as the head of your company, you bear responsibility for Adam's behavior. And to be frank, there are other reasons why the deal was canceled. What do you mean? I explained everything that had transpired with Adam in detail. Ms. Grant was left speechless. I had no idea it went that far. Placing expectations on someone because they're young, or assuming they'll succeed just because you hope they will, is wishful thinking at best. "I'm so sorry," she said, sounding completely defeated. "Regardless, it's your responsibility to address this within your company." Understood. After ending the call with Ms. Grant, I let out a deep sigh and muttered to myself, "It's truly exhausting, having to use such harsh words on someone I know." The next day, Ms. Grant and Adam visited Y Corporation. In their hands was a cake from a renowned bakery. One that had recently garnered immense popularity across all age groups through TV and magazine features. "This is an apology for our misconduct. If you had the time to buy something like this, perhaps you should have avoided the misconduct in the first place. Do you even realize how crucial this deal was?" "No, that's not true," Adam protested, but his expression betrayed his ignorance of the deal's importance. "Really? Do you have any idea how much effort Ms. Grant put into preparing for this deal?" "What?" Ms. Grant had spent an entire year preparing for this deal to succeed. She dedicated herself to it tirelessly, almost without rest, and handled everything on her own. Then, just as the deal was approaching its final stages, an overseas trip coincided with the crucial moment. Given how much effort she had invested, she must have felt deeply frustrated. However, as a company leader, she had to set aside her personal feelings to ensure the deal's success. To that end, she entrusted the responsibility to Adam, who was regarded as one of the company's most promising talents. I didn't know that. And yet, the person she trusted turned out to be a bigger problem than she could have imagined. Adam always acted based on his own ideas, displaying arrogant and self-centered thinking. Though his actions were his own, the responsibility also lay with the company that had chosen to entrust him with such a critical role. Adam listened, stunned and unable to respond. Your reckless, arrogant behavior has brought this upon yourself. If you had conducted yourself with basic professionalism, none of this would have happened. Reflect on that if you even have a future to reflect on. Adam, the executive team will review your actions and decide on your punishment. Until then, you're on leave. That's the right move. And in the future, sharpen your ability to assess people. Yes. Just as I felt relieved that it was finally over, I noticed something unusual about Adam, who had been standing there in a daze. Why me? What did I do wrong? If anyone's to blame, it's you for giving me this responsibility. Damn it, this is bullshit. Adam? At that moment, Adam let out a furious roar. Ah! He raised his right arm and swung it forcefully, aiming a punch directly at Ms. Grant. Watch out! I shouted, rushing to step between them to protect Ms. Grant. But, hi-ya! To my surprise, Adam's body was suddenly lifted into the air and slammed onto the floor with impressive force. Ouch! Phew! At that moment, I was reminded of the first time I met Ms. Grant. It was 30 years ago, shortly after I had been promoted to department manager, a position I had held for less than a year. Back then, I was still adjusting to the role and was consumed by the daily demands of work. Back then, a bright and cheerful 16-year-old part-time worker named Olivia Grant joined the team. Hi, I'm Olivia. Nice to meet you. She was incredibly friendly and cheerful, quickly bonding with the other employees and part-timers on her very first day. She was diligent in her work and, most impressively, a fast learner. Anything she was taught, she would grasp immediately and put into practice without hesitation. Even tasks that took full-time employees days to learn, she would master within the same day. Before long, everyone in the company had high expectations for her. Naturally, I was one of those people. But that was part of the problem. While she handled her work flawlessly, the mounting expectations placed on her began to take a toll. I need to do better. I have to try harder. Before long, the pressure pushed her to the brink of a breakdown. One day, the inevitable happened. While following an employee's instructions during a shift, she suddenly threw that person across the room. Thankfully, the employee only suffered a minor scratch on their arm. However, the incident shocked her so much that she collapsed on the spot, convulsing and losing consciousness. She was immediately taken to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed her with depression caused by overwork and stress. The excessive expectations placed on her, coupled with her hardworking nature and unwillingness to voice her struggles. She had created a ticking time bomb within herself without even knowing. Less than a week later, she resigned from the company. While I personally wished she could stay, the company felt it had no choice but to let her go after the incident. Among the employees, the consensus was clear: they didn't want to work with someone who had caused such a problem. Even the part-timers who had been so close to her expressed relief, saying things like, "It's good she's gone," and "I'm glad she didn't come back." But I didn't share their view. I believed it was my responsibility as her manager to have noticed the signs and supported her before things reached that point. No matter how busy I had been, I should have paid more attention to her. Perhaps, if I had, I could have saved her from reaching her breaking point. That regret lingered within me for years. Brings back memories, doesn't it? I'm truly sorry about back then. As your manager, I failed to see how much you were struggling. Ms. Grant chuckled softly. What are you saying? Everything I am today is thanks to you, Mr. Sullivan. That's news to me. After I left the company, I was so embarrassed and overwhelmed by the judgmental stares of others that I couldn't even leave the house. I spent my days locked away, while my parents grew increasingly exasperated with me. It was like living in a nightmare. But then, Mr. Sullivan, you came to my house every single day. Do you remember that? Of course, I remembered. Every day, after finishing work, I would visit her. No matter how late I finished due to overtime, or even on my days off, I never skipped a single visit. While part of it was concern for her, The main reason was to apologize for my responsibility in her having to leave the company. Naturally, your parents weren't very welcoming at the time. Every time I showed up, they'd tell me to leave, never come back. And even threw garbage at me once. That's true. They thought, who is this person who keeps coming every day? But you know. My parents later admitted that they saw you as an honest and sincere person. They also told me they were genuinely happy you came. Even though they were too emotional at the time to show it. I see. I'm glad to hear that. To hear that, tears unexpectedly welling up in my eyes. It was because of that time that I decided I wanted to be like you, Mr. Sullivan. From there, she shared stories I hadn't known. After leaving the company, Ms. Grant joined O Corporation right after graduating high school. Her natural charisma and diligent attitude earned her high praise. Like me, she became the youngest department manager at 24. As a manager, she continued to deliver impressive results, eventually earning another promotion to director, and then, at 40, becoming the president of O Corporation. When I became president, I made up my mind to secure a major deal with Y Corporation and work alongside you, Mr. Sullivan. At that time, I was already deeply immersed in the responsibilities of leading Y Corporation. So that's how it was. But for things to end up like this, I plan to re-evaluate and retrain all my employees. It may take time, but I'll make sure we're ready to partner with Y Corporation again. I'll be looking forward to it. We smiled at each other, and the atmosphere was about to be filled with a sense of calm. Just then, Adam, who had been lying on the floor where Ms. Grant had thrown him, staggered to his feet, panting heavily. You've been running your mouths for too long. I don't care what happens to you anymore. I'll crush you all. Ah! But before he could act, Adam was once again hurled violently to the floor. This time, it was my secretary, Julia, who had thrown him. With her usual calm demeanor, Julia looked down at Adam and said in a low, firm voice, "Enough is enough. Now that I think about it, you've trained in self-defense, haven't you? I've also studied judo. And what color is your belt?" "I'm a 6th degree black belt." Upon hearing this, Adam's shoulders slumped in complete defeat. More of a bodyguard than a secretary, aren't you? A secretary I'm proud of. Thank you. Following the failed deal, Adam was held responsible and forced to resign from O Corporation. The consequences were severe. A staggering $100 million in damages arose from the canceled deal. Though it was an impossible sum for Adam to repay in his lifetime, Ms. Grant insisted on pursuing the full amount. After his resignation, Adam began working tirelessly from morning to night. How many years would it take to even scratch the surface of the debt? It was hard to imagine, but Adam had no choice but to accept it. All I could think was, he brought this upon himself. 1 year later, the story came full circle. Mr. Sullivan, thank you for meeting with us today. The pleasure is mine. This time, the deal with O Corporation was successfully finalized. It had been a rocky journey, but from here on, we would collaborate to grow both companies further. Together, we aim to build companies grounded in integrity and kindness, prioritizing employee development and working hand in hand to serve our customers. That is the vision Y Corporation and O Corporation strive to achieve. It might take years, but I was determined that we would make it happen. I am truly lucky. After all, I can give my beloved daughter a job that suits her bright future. The manager in front of me, Mark, said this while grinning at me. When I said nothing, he continued speaking. Your job will be taken over by my daughter, so you might as well quit immediately. It seems I've been set up by this man. Moreover, he's planning to steal the $30 million contract I secured and claim it for himself and his allies. At that moment, I was shaking with anger, feeling as though I might explode. Yet, it was also true that there was nothing I could do about his ruthless treatment. I had no choice but to accept the punishment handed to me. However, a few months later, the situation took a complete turn. Indeed, those who try to take what belongs to others in an underhanded way will eventually face divine retribution. Mark, the man who brought me down, ultimately met his downfall. His failure stemmed from not truly understanding his own daughter. My name is Ryan, and I'm 32 years old. I work in the sales department of a pharmaceutical company. I joined this company straight after graduating from university, so it's been almost 10 years now. Although I struggled to adapt at first, I feel like I've really gotten the hang of my job over time. In the pharmaceutical industry, new innovations are made every day. I find this world constantly stimulating and fulfilling as I continue to learn new things. My ultimate goal is to become an MR. This aspiration hasn't changed since I started working here. In fact, you could say I joined this company with the sole intention of becoming an MR. An MR's role is to provide healthcare professionals with information about the effectiveness and safety of their company's products, aiming to have these adopted in medical practices. It's an important job that has the potential to change what medicines are available in hospitals and pharmacies. There may even be lives saved by the new medications being developed. Knowing that my work contributes to society in such a meaningful way fills me with pride and motivates me even more. That said, I still have a long way to go before achieving my goal. For now, I'm giving it my all in the sales department. This job is far from easy, and the reality was that I couldn't secure any contracts at the beginning. No matter how enthusiastically I pitched or how clearly I tried to explain our products, nothing worked. In fact, I was often turned away at the door. But I didn't give up. I guess I've always been a tenacious person by nature. With sheer determination, I kept walking from place to place, pitching tirelessly. I also realized that to effectively communicate the value of our products, I needed to have an in-depth understanding of them myself. So, I dedicated myself to studying our products thoroughly every day. Thanks to my efforts, I eventually earned the title of manager. Receiving that promotion felt like validation for all the hard work I had put in. While I've been fully immersed in my work and leading a fulfilling life, I've recently been presented with an incredible opportunity. It's for the newly established overseas business department in our company. Much to my surprise, the CEO, Mr. Carter, personally approached me with the offer to head this department. Are you really entrusting me with the new department? The unexpected proposal filled me with joy, as though I were on cloud nine. After hearing more, I learned that Mr. Carter highly valued my language skills. To be honest, I've always felt that my proficiency in English was a strength. I've always enjoyed learning and discovering foreign languages. This time, I was thrilled to finally have an opportunity to put those skills to use. With the launch of this department, other members were also brought together. Some were familiar faces, while others were people I hadn't interacted with much. Even so, I made an effort to treat everyone equally and help each person shine in their own way. Among them, a female colleague named Sarah, who I was responsible for mentoring, seemed to particularly appreciate my guidance. Ryan, I really admire your work ethic. I want to become like you as soon as possible. I'll do my best. Sarah would often say this to me. When you're respected like this by a colleague, there's no way you can slack off. To meet their expectations, I pushed myself even harder at work. I believed that by tackling even the smallest tasks with full effort, I could set an example and become a better leader for my team. Then, one day, my hard work finally paid off. I managed to secure a major $30 million contract. The client was an American pharmaceutical company. They proposed working with us on the joint development of a new drug. However, at first, they didn't seem very enthusiastic about the idea. While it wasn't an outright rejection, their response felt lukewarm at best. But I couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Determined to persuade them, I held numerous discussions with the client, presenting our case repeatedly. As a result, they gradually came to see the value we could bring. When I announced the successful contract to my department, everyone was overjoyed. Some praised me with remarks like, "As expected of you." Others were motivated, saying, "Let's follow in your footsteps and work harder." Some even approached me, asking, "Please teach us the secrets to successful negotiations." This major success significantly boosted the morale of our team. I could feel a growing sense of unity within the group, which made me feel both encouraged and determined to work even harder. However, despite appearances, not everything in our new department was going smoothly. The truth is, there was one person who wasn't pleased with my efforts. That person was Mark, the head of our department. Initially, we didn't have a bad relationship, but over time, he began to target me relentlessly. Mark could be described as a complicated person. Despite being in the position of a department head, he harbored a deep inferiority complex about his education. It likely stemmed from the fact that he only graduated high school before entering the workforce. He seemed to have a particular dislike for university graduates, highly educated individuals, or those with advanced skills. Above all, he appeared to genuinely resent people who were proficient in languages, a skill he completely lacked. For example, whenever we casually used business terms in conversations, he would snap, "We're Japanese, so speak Japanese." I often used business jargon unconsciously, which seemed to irritate him even more. Once, he went so far as to say, "Don't act cool, you're Japanese. Stop showing off, it's gross." These unreasonable remarks obviously made me angry. But since he was my superior, there wasn't much I could do but let his comments slide. One day, while I was working on some documents in the office, a colleague called out to me, "Ryan. Sorry, but can you come here quickly?" The way they called my name and their tone carried a sense of urgency. Wondering if there was some sort of trouble, I left my desk with a slight sense of worry. "What's wrong?" I rushed over to the colleague who had called me. It turned out they had received a call from abroad and couldn't communicate effectively, so they wanted me to handle it. Aside from that, there didn't seem to be any major trouble. Relieved, I took the call and addressed the issue. As soon as I hung up, the colleague looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry for troubling you, Ryan," they said, looking a bit downcast. But when I smiled and replied, "It was no problem at all, nothing to worry about," they seemed relieved. After seeing them off, I returned to my desk. I was about to resume my work when I noticed something slightly off about my computer screen. Something felt different. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what, but there was a subtle, unsettling sense that something wasn't right. Leaving the screen on while I was away had been a mistake in itself. Thinking it was an urgent matter, I had rushed off and forgotten to lock my computer. This meant that after I left, anyone could have accessed it. Perhaps someone had tampered with my computer. With all the critical data stored on it, I was filled with anxiety. Trying to keep calm, I glanced cautiously in Mark's direction. The moment our eyes met, he gave me a sly, unpleasant smile. Later that day, as I was about to leave the office after work, Mark approached me. In a cheerful tone, he said, "Something interesting is going to happen tomorrow," before walking away with a cryptic smile. Of course, I had no idea what he was talking about. By the time I thought to ask, he had already disappeared. Feeling puzzled by his words, I headed home. That night, with some extra free time, I stayed up late studying for the MR certification exam. By the time sleep overtook me, I had completely forgotten the odd sense of unease from earlier. The next morning, as soon as I arrived at the office, I was summoned by Mr. Carter. I couldn't help but feel excited. Perhaps our overseas department had achieved a major milestone. With high hopes, I headed to the CEO's office. "Excuse me," I said, opening the door. The moment Mr. Carter saw me, he shouted, "What have you done?" Stunned, I froze in place. He was visibly furious. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand." "What happened?" I asked nervously. With a thunderous expression, he replied, "There's been a data breach." Apparently, the materials I had prepared had been leaked to an external party. The client had discovered this and was furious, threatening not only to terminate the contract but also to sue for damages. I didn't do it, I declared firmly, knowing I had no involvement whatsoever. There wasn't even a 1% chance I could have made such a mistake. However, Mr. Carter firmly said, "That's impossible." He explained that the leak was traced back to my email address and had occurred yesterday. How could that be? I mentally reviewed my actions from the previous day. Then I remembered stepping away from my desk briefly when a colleague called me. When I returned, I had felt something was off about my computer. It must have been tampered with during that short time. Realizing this, I wanted to explain that I wasn't responsible. However, the fact remained that I had forgotten to lock my computer, creating the opportunity for this to happen. I had no excuse to offer. Mr. Carter's anger escalated, and eventually, he said, "You may need to take responsibility by resigning." In essence, he was telling me I was being fired. Feeling utterly crushed, I left the office. As I stepped into the hallway, overwhelmed with despair, I noticed a man standing there. It was Mark. He smirked and said, "What's wrong? You look pale." I told him about my dismissal, still baffled by everything that had happened. Feigning shock, he exaggeratedly replied, "Oh no. You really should lock your computer next time." How did he know I had forgotten to lock my computer? Suspicious, I asked him directly. He brushed it off, saying, "Did I say that? Maybe you're so shaken by the news that you misheard me." His evasive response only deepened my unease. Ignoring my growing frustration, he continued speaking. "But really, I'm so lucky. I can give my beloved daughter a job that's perfect for her, starting with that $30 million contract. It's just right for her future." I couldn't believe my ears. What could this possibly mean? Was he really planning to hand over the $30 million contract I secured to his daughter, who had just returned from studying abroad? As if to confirm my suspicions, he continued speaking. "My daughter, Emily, will be taking over your position, so you might as well quit right away," he said. In that moment, I realized I had been set up by Mark. It was clear he was behind the data breach. That's why he smugly told me yesterday, "Something interesting is going to happen." Everything started to make sense. You're the one who leaked the information, aren't you?" I asked. "Who knows? What are you talking about?" Mark replied, half smirking as he feigned ignorance. I wanted to report this to Mr. Carter immediately, but Mark stopped me. "Do you have proof? Without evidence, how are you going to pin this on me?" "Poor you," he said mockingly. Then, with a grin, he added, "Better luck next time," before walking away. He was right. Without any proof, no one would believe me. In the end, there was nothing I could do, and I was forced to leave the company. 1 week before my resignation, Emily joined the company, effectively replacing me. On her first day, she approached me and said with a sneer, "You're still here? Don't get in the way of my work." I couldn't help but think. Like father, like daughter. Emily had strikingly dyed hair, meticulously applied makeup, and a strong perfume that lingered wherever she walked. Sarah kindly advised her, since we handle pharmaceuticals, it might be better to avoid strong perfume. But Emily clicked her tongue in irritation and snapped, "Mind your own business, old lady." Her attitude was defiant, to say the least. On top of that, she spent work hours browsing social media on the company's computer, leaving her colleagues exasperated. 1 week later, the day of my resignation arrived. After tidying up my desk and ensuring everything was spotless, I left the office. As I stepped outside, Sarah ran after me. "Ryan, did something happen with Mark?" she asked. Since I was leaving, I saw no harm in explaining the situation. After hearing everything, Sarah was furious. "That's absolutely outrageous!" she exclaimed, clearly enraged. I nodded weakly and replied, "It's terrible, but there's nothing I can do now." However, Sarah said resolutely, "I won't give up. I'll find a way to get the security camera footage. Once we have it, we'll know who's behind this, she declared with determination. Her words lifted a small weight off my chest, and I felt a glimmer of hope. As I left the company that day, I felt a bit lighter, thanks to Sarah's promise. A week after my resignation, while job hunting, I received an unexpected call. It was from the very company I had secured the $30 million contract with. When I asked about the purpose of the call, they said, "If you're not working anywhere right now, why not join us?" The unexpected offer filled me with excitement. However, I was currently studying to earn a certification. I was searching for a workplace where I could finally achieve my goal of becoming an MR. When I explained this, they assured me that they respected my ambitions. They even mentioned that they would consider promoting me to a Mr. position in the future. With such promising prospects, I decided to join the company without hesitation. After transferring, I became even more determined, dedicating myself to my studies at home to achieve my certification. Despite the difficult circumstances leading up to this change, starting fresh felt incredibly liberating. One day, during this new chapter of my life, I received a call from someone I never wanted to hear from again. Of course, it was Mark. The moment I answered, he shouted angrily, "Hey! What's the meaning of this?" When I asked, "What do you mean?" Mark explained that the pharmaceutical company had called to complain, saying, "We're receiving emails in incomprehensible languages from the new representative. Where is the previous person? Shouldn't you ask your daughter about that?" I thought honestly. I had already left the company and had no involvement. However, Mark insisted. My daughter said she responded properly in English. "There's no issue on our end." He then barked, "Check the email exchanges right now," and abruptly hung up. Suppressing a sigh, I opened the forwarded emails. The problem was immediately clear. Her emails made no sense at all. It wasn't just a matter of poor email etiquette, her English was so chaotic that effective communication was impossible. So, the rumors about her were true. At that moment, everything finally clicked for me. After my resignation, I had briefly spoken with a former colleague about Emily. According to him, Emily could barely speak English. She studied abroad for a year in the US but mostly stayed around Japanese people, so her English didn't improve. She even said herself that she got by on vibes, they explained. At the time, I was skeptical, but the emails left no doubt. On top of that, it turned out later that her strong perfume caused issues as well. Despite Sarah's earlier advice, Emily had continued wearing it, and the CEO of the pharmaceutical company was outraged, finding it incredibly disrespectful. It seems that in this matter, Mark urged Emily, "You need to apologize immediately." However, she didn't appear concerned at all. Instead, she casually replied, "It's fine." I even took a photo with one of their employees as a keepsake and posted it on social media. Unfortunately, that very post led to an even bigger disaster. In the photo, Emily was holding a document with sensitive company data clearly visible. The data leak was complete. Mark panicked, but Emily didn't seem to grasp the gravity of the situation. Amidst the chaos, I received another call from Mark. "Fix this immediately. This is a disaster." "You can handle it, right?" he shouted, his tone still as demanding as ever. I found it astonishing how demanding and arrogant he was, despite asking for a favor. After all, he was the one who had set me up and gotten me fired. There was no reason for me to help him, none at all. How could he expect me to go along with such a self-serving request? Furious, I replied coldly, "You and your daughter seem to be quite skilled at leaking information. I'm no longer involved, so have Emily handle it." With that, I ended the call. Emily's string of mistakes continued to pile up, resulting in countless complaints to the company. Ultimately, the pharmaceutical company terminated the $30 million contract. To make matters worse, Emily's photo went viral, sparking public outrage. The situation escalated to the point where Emily was sued by the pharmaceutical company, causing a major uproar. It was only natural for the incident to be picked up by the news. Reporters began gathering outside the company headquarters daily. Meanwhile, Sarah delivered the final blow. She had managed to obtain the security camera footage from the day of the data breach. When Sarah showed the footage to Mr. Carter, it clearly captured Mark tampering with my computer during the brief moment I had stepped away. The video made it undeniably clear what had happened at the time. Coincidentally, it was the exact same time the emails had been sent. With mounting issues and an avalanche of complaints, the company couldn't handle the chaos. In no time, it collapsed entirely. Both Mark and Emily found themselves unemployed. Reportedly, they were hounded by the media even after the company's closure, unable to leave their home. Emily suggested fleeing to the US, but Mark dismissed the idea, saying, "Neither of us can speak English." Meanwhile, I was thriving in my new role at the pharmaceutical company. Work was going well, and my studies for Mr. Certification were progressing smoothly. With the date of the MR certification exam approaching, I was living fulfilling days while steadily preparing for the test. One day, I received a call from Sarah. She was also job hunting after the company's collapse, but it seemed she was struggling to find a suitable position and was deeply troubled by it. She reached out to me, asking for some advice. So, I decided to meet her for dinner that evening to talk through her concerns. Over the meal, we discussed her challenges, and I listened attentively to what she had to say. "Whenever I mention the name of my former workplace, I get rejected immediately," she said. It seemed the company's reputation had deteriorated far beyond what I had imagined. This was clearly making her job search much more difficult. It was a tough situation, no doubt about it. Thinking about how I could help her, I started considering what I could do to support her in finding a solution. After all, Sarah was the one who exposed Mark's wrongdoing and cleared my name. She fought for my honor, and I felt there must be something I could do for her in return. I suggested that she consider applying to my current pharmaceutical company. Her face lit up immediately. "Really? Getting a recommendation from you feels like a dream. Can I truly count on your help?" she said with excitement. Her joyful expression filled me with determination. "It's my turn to help," I thought as I nodded firmly. I recommended Sarah to my company, highlighting her intelligence and capabilities. Thanks to her strong skills and determination, she was successfully hired. Now, she has become my trusted partner at work. Her efficiency and ability to excel were quickly recognized, and she earned the respect of everyone around her. Still, she often says, "Ryan, I've always admired you. I love how you approach life." Every time, her words make me blush with pride and gratitude. Meanwhile, Mark and Emily eventually moved to the US. But of course, it was Mark. His inability to communicate in English was so severe that nothing seemed to go well for him. There was even an incident where he snapped at a cashier, shouting, "I'm Japanese. It's normal for me not to speak English." Nearby, a Japanese bystander calmly advised him, "We are in the US. If you're living here, perhaps you should study English." When I heard this story, I could vividly picture Mark's indignant reaction. It was just so typical of him. As for me, I continued dedicating my spare time to studying and finally obtained my MR certification. The moment my long-held dream became a reality, I was overcome with emotion, tears streaming down my face as I felt my years of effort had paid off. Becoming an MR was everything I had hoped for, but it was also more challenging than I imagined. The role required extensive expertise, came with strict quotas, and demanded relentless effort. Despite the difficulties, I found immense satisfaction in my work. Doctors and nurses at the hospitals I visited would often say, "We trust you, Ryan." It made me incredibly happy. That sense of trust gave me a profound sense of purpose. Recently, I've been receiving more compliments on my ability to mentor and guide others at work. It's likely that earning my certification deepened my knowledge significantly. This gave me the confidence to trust my own way of thinking. Many colleagues aspiring to become MRs have asked me for study tips. Having studied independently, I understand how tough it can be to navigate the process alone. The challenge of staying motivated and finding effective study methods is something I know all too well. That's why I decided to accept their request. As a result, I now host study sessions for anyone interested, with the added purpose of helping to mentor and develop younger colleagues. By increasing the number of people who can become MRs, it might ultimately contribute to improving someone's health. This thought keeps me motivated even during my busiest days. One evening after work, Sarah invited me out to celebrate my Mr. certification. We went to a cozy bar and enjoyed lively conversation. Throughout the night, she repeatedly said, "Congratulations," which made me feel incredibly appreciated and proud. As we talked, the conversation naturally drifted toward work. I casually mentioned something about my job. But she suddenly frowned and said, "This is personal time. No work talk allowed, it's banned." Her expression and tone were so cute and amusing that I couldn't help but laugh out loud. At that moment, I realized something. Being with Sarah brought me a sense of peace. I had always kept my composure and hidden my stress, no matter how tough things got. But with her, I felt completely relaxed. What was this feeling? To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what it meant. Sarah was an important colleague, a teammate, and a partner in the truest sense. That wouldn't change. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there might be something more. For now, though, I chose not to overthink it. I simply knew that I enjoyed being with her, and that was enough. Looking back at everything that had happened, I could confidently say that my work life was going well. In fact, at my current company, I had managed to secure a $50 million contract. I was fortunate to be surrounded by great colleagues, making my workdays fulfilling and enjoyable. Still, I had come to realize that success wasn't about the numbers. What truly mattered was treating clients with sincerity and recognizing the impact of our work on others. After all, the comfort and conveniences we enjoy today are thanks to someone else's hard work. That's a truth I never want to forget. I also want to cherish the people working alongside me. No one can achieve everything alone. I hope to live by trusting and supporting those around me, helping each other along the way. That, I believed, was the most important lesson of all. If you can solve this problem within 5 minutes, I'll grant you one wish, anything you want. I was attending the wedding of a close friend. And there, I unexpectedly ran into Kimberly, a stunning former classmate from middle school. Back in the day, she always had a sharp tongue and considered me her rival. Now, here she was, throwing a difficult question at me. The question left everyone around us speechless, while she smirked confidently. But I simply said, "I don't even need 5 minutes. I've already solved it." What? My name is Kevin, 30 years old. I work for a certain company. I'm single and have no girlfriend, nor am I married. My colleagues at work often say, "You should hurry up and get married," but I have my reservations about marriage itself. It's probably because of the way my life has unfolded so far. I was born and raised in an ordinary middle-class family. When I was little, my parents spoiled me like any other child. But once I entered elementary school, they began pushing me into intense academic training. When I reached the upper grades, I finally asked them why things had changed so much. It wasn't like this when I was younger. "Why are you making me study so hard and obsess over my grades now?" They explained that they had struggled in life because of their lack of education. They didn't want me to face the same hardships. So they pushed me toward middle school entrance exams and aimed to get me into a prestigious school that had a direct path to college. The daily grind of studying was exhausting, but it helped me develop a solid foundation in many subjects. Thanks to that, I passed the middle school entrance exam without much trouble and was admitted to a private middle school. However, my parents' educational efforts weren't limited to academics. They also made sure I got regular exercise, so by the time I graduated elementary school, I was noticeably more athletic than most of my peers. Some classmates resented me for it, but I didn't pay attention to their opinions. I had to live up to my parents' expectations. This caused me to drift apart from even my close friends toward the end of elementary school, but it didn't bother me. Or rather, I couldn't afford to let it bother me, since I was so focused on meeting my parents' expectations. The middle school I enrolled in was a prestigious institution, known for being attended by the children of wealthy families, politicians, and corporate executives. At such a prestigious school, I clearly stood out. Even so, my grades were decent enough that some people envied me. Look at him, always wearing cheap clothes. Yeah, this school is for elites. He's so bold for a poor kid. He's probably here to suck up to us, like his family told him to. His presence lowers the class of this school. It was obvious to anyone that I didn't belong. I expected as much from the moment I got in, so it didn't faze me. But one person who couldn't tolerate it was Kimberly, the daughter of a company president, who led a group that didn't like me. She could never beat me on tests and always got frustrated about it, declaring me her rival on her own terms. Next time, I'll definitely be on top. I didn't take Kimberly seriously at all. But she kept pestering me so persistently that rumors started to spread among some people that we're actually dating. No way. How on earth could anyone look at us and think we're a couple? Give me a break. Even friends who talked to me because of my good grades started asking about my relationship with Kimberly, and I had no idea how to handle it. Both Kimberly and I firmly denied such rumors with visible annoyance, but I never understood why she was so fixated on me. Then, when I was in my third year of middle school, winter break arrived. That's when my father's company went bankrupt, and our family's financial situation plummeted. I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it. We're family. We'll get through this together. Mom's right, Dad. If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word. Thank you, Kevin, but you're still just a kid. I promise I'll make sure you can at least graduate. Thanks, Dad. But don't push yourself too hard. Even though he promised not to overdo it, my father ended up borrowing money to scrape together enough for me to finish middle school. On the night of my graduation ceremony, when we should have been celebrating, my father bowed his head to me. Dad? What's wrong? Kevin, I'm truly sorry. I just can't. I can't keep paying for high school tuition. With tears welling up in his eyes, he laid bare the harsh reality. It's okay. I already knew. That's why I talked to my homeroom teacher and the school chairman. I told them I'd be giving up on high school because of our financial struggles. Kevin, Knowing I couldn't burden my parents any further, I had already decided and informed the school before graduation. I'm really sorry. We forced our values onto you, and now. Don't worry about it. I know you've always acted with my best interests in mind. That's why we'll keep working together, the three of us. As a family. Yeah, you're right. Looks like our son just cheered us up. Yeah, he really did. Seeing even a small smile return to my parents' faces at that moment made me genuinely happy. What I didn't tell them, though, was that I honestly dreaded continuing school. The thought of enduring more snide remarks from classmates made me feel relieved to step away. Besides, it's not like anyone would care if I wasn't around anymore. Afterward, people reportedly found it odd that I didn't show up for high school. But thanks to the school's respect for family privacy, no one ever found out my circumstances. Naturally, not even Kimberly, who used to pick on me, learned about what happened. With my parents facing mounting debt, I couldn't let them shoulder the burden alone. I started working part-time jobs, lying about my age to get hired. Fortunately, I looked mature for my age and managed to juggle multiple jobs. Thanks to my physical strength, I worked tirelessly, day and night. However, even by working multiple jobs in a single day, it's still just a part-time wage. It barely makes a dent in paying off the debt. Still, I pushed myself harder, determined to help sustain our family's life. But my father, caught in a vicious cycle of debt, eventually turned to loan sharks. I can't do this anymore. I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize. Yeah, Dad. I'll work even harder. Together with my mother, I encouraged my father to keep trying harder. At that moment, my father gave us a smile and said, "You're right," but tragedy struck soon after. When the debt became unbearable and there was no way out, my parents decided to take their lives, dragging me with them. By some cruel twist of fate, I was the only one who survived. When I woke up in the hospital, I lost control. Doctors and nurses had to restrain me. As I struggled, I was sedated and slowly drifted into unconsciousness. In those moments, I thought, why me? Why was I the only one left? Why did Dad and Mom get to rest while I was left behind? Is God telling me to keep going? Please, stop. I'm tired too. Let me go where they are. I'm begging you. With those thoughts racing through my mind, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, I was consumed by despair. The scars on my body were a permanent reminder, and I began to resent my parents for escaping and leaving me behind. After that, since I was still a minor, I ended up living in a facility for a while. However, having fallen into deep distrust of people, I never opened up to anyone around me. Naturally, no one wanted to approach me after seeing my closed-off attitude. But there was one exception, a boy my age named Steven. No matter how much I ignored him, he persistently kept talking to me. "You're a strange guy, you know that? Oh. You finally talked. It's because you're annoying. Well, whatever. I'm Steven. Nice to meet you. Can I call you Kevin? Do whatever you want." With just a few words exchanged, Steven became overly familiar and started talking to me more and more. Without being asked, he began sharing his own story. Steven had been abandoned by his parents before he could even remember their faces and had grown up almost entirely in the facility. If you don't even remember their faces, isn't that better in a way? Yeah, I guess so. I hate them. They left me behind and went on their way. Yeah, that's rough too. But hey, why don't you get back at them? Get back at them? When I looked at him, wondering what he meant, Steven gave me a wide grin. Yeah. They might have had an easy way out, but you can live a better, happier life and prove them wrong. Well, I guess that's not such a bad idea. Right? Bonding over our shared experiences of losing the parent lottery, Steven and I gradually became close friends, so close that I could even call him my best friend. Someone like me, who rarely opened up to anyone, and Steven get along seemed to put the adults at the facility somewhat at ease. Even so, I mostly avoided interacting with others, only talking to Steven. One day, however, a wealthy man named Andrew approached me, expressing his interest in becoming my foster parent. No way. Steven's here, and I don't want to be taken in by anyone now. Come on, don't say that. I really want to take you in, Kevin. I said no. Go find someone else. I was adamant about staying with Steven and fiercely resisted Andrew's advances, but he kept coming back to the facility daily, trying to persuade me. Every time, I would turn him away. I noticed Steven always seemed like he had something to say, but since he never spoke up, I didn't ask him about it. This routine continued for about a month. Finally, one day, I lost my patience with Andrew, who was visiting again. You're so annoying, old man. I hate rich people. Hey, Kevin. It's fine, Steven. You're right, money doesn't guarantee happiness. But you shouldn't underestimate what money can do either. For instance, I could use my money to buy 10 years of your time right now. He pulled out a wad of cash from his bag and smirked, flashing the bills in front of me. Disgusted, I scowled and muttered, "What a sleazebag." Well, I'm selfish, you see. I don't want a partner, but I do want a kid. That said, I'm not asking you to see me as your father. If you could humor this rich man's whim for a while, I'd be grateful. He leaned in suddenly and reached out his hand toward me. What the hell are you even talking about? Ha, you'll understand in time. Yeah, no clue what you mean. Kevin. I also think you should go with this person. You've been chosen by the god of wealth. If you don't grab this opportunity now, you'll be stuck at the bottom forever. Stephen suddenly blurted out, raising his voice. Stephen? But I'll catch up to you someday. Stephen gave me a big, confident grin, and though I hesitated, he firmly placed my hand in Andrew's. Andrew, Kevin's a handful, but I'm counting on you to take care of him. He bowed his head to Andrew and guided my hand into his grip. Fine. I'll play along with your rich man's whim. Thank you. All right, I'll get the paperwork started right away. Just wait for me here. Yeah. Go do whatever you want. Realizing there was no escaping this, I reluctantly accepted being taken in by Andrew. That's great, Kevin. This is mostly your fault, you know. Oh, come on. It's fine, isn't it? Just make sure to catch up with me, all right? Of course. I extended my hand to Stephen for a handshake, and he smiled as he firmly shook it. From then on, I started living with Andrew. As he had promised from the start, Andrew didn't demand anything of me, nor did he try to play the role of a father. It was so exactly as he had said that I almost felt deflated. Oh, Kevin, we'll start studying next week, okay? I've already done a fair bit back at the facility. Not enough. If you're going to step out into society, it doesn't hurt to have a solid education and some credentials to your name. Oh, what a hassle. Now, don't say that. True to his word. Andrew used his financial resources and personal connections to get me access to higher education and imparted much of his own knowledge to me. Once I started studying in earnest, I found myself enjoying the process of learning new things. Andrew taught me so much that I couldn't help but get drawn in, eager to listen and absorb it all. It felt like I was moving to the rhythm of Andrew's plans, but at some point, I didn't mind anymore. Before I knew it, the promised 10 years had passed. On the anniversary of those 10 years, Andrew congratulated me. You've done well. Well, it's easy for someone like me. Oh, stop it. All right, now for the main event. Today marks exactly 10 years the deal's done. From this moment on, you're free. Go wherever you want. Huh? Wait, what are you talking about? Come on, everything's ready. Off you go. With that, Andrew handed me a small amount of luggage and some cash, practically shoving me out of the house. Standing outside the gate, I found myself dumbfounded. Huh? Wait. That's way too whimsical, even for him. What the hell is he thinking? Then, I grasped the situation in an instant and let out a scream. However, I knew that screaming wouldn't change anything. For now, I found myself a cheap apartment and started living alone. A few years later, I received wonderful news. Stephen, with whom I'd kept in touch since leaving the facility, had successfully launched his own business and was getting married. That guy, he really pulled it off. When I received the wedding invitation from Stephen, I considered sending him a congratulatory message right away. But thinking he was probably busy, I decided to save my words for the big day. I bought a suit for the wedding, picked out a gift for Stephen, and looked forward to the day with excitement. The wedding itself was a grand affair, befitting Stephen's success. I hadn't expected such a large-scale event and was awestruck by the size and splendor of it all. As the ceremony progressed and we moved into the reception hall, I spotted someone among the bride's friends that left me stunned. It was Kimberly, the daughter of a company president and my middle school classmate who had disliked me. Wait, is that Kimberly? The last time I had seen her, she still had a youthful appearance, but now she was even more stunning than I remembered. And I couldn't help but stare. As I watched her, I thought for a moment that our eyes met, and I quickly looked away. Did she notice me? No, it's been years. There's no way she'd recognize me. But Kimberly, having clearly recognized me, approached without hesitation. Well, if it isn't Kevin? What a coincidence meeting you here. Ah, yeah, it's really been a long time. Caught off guard by Kimberly addressing me, I managed to return the greeting while keeping my composure. I always wondered why you disappeared after middle school when we got to high school. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. It was due to family circumstances. Well, I figured as much. Your family seemed pretty poor, after all. Ha ha. I'll let you imagine whatever you want. I gave her a vague response, expecting her to bring this up sooner or later. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the table where Kimberly had been sitting. It was full of familiar faces. Some of them began whispering, "Hey, isn't that? Oh, those girls are here too." Brings back memories. Weren't they the ones who used to flatter Kimberly all the time? As I dug through my memories, Stephen suddenly called out. "Hey, Kevin." "Huh? What is it?" I snapped out of my thoughts as Stephen waved me over with urgency. After excusing myself from Kimberly, I walked toward him. The moment I got close, Stephen grabbed my shoulder. "Wait a second, are you actually acquainted with Kimberly?" Yeah. I mean, kind of. It's been years, though." Stephen leaned in and whispered something to me, and I replied while reminiscing about the past. I was honestly amazed that Kimberly remembered me after nearly 15 years. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how Stephen knew her. Oh, Kimberly is one of my wife's friends from college. And get this, she passed the Tokyo University entrance exam as an external applicant in high school. Apparently, she even won Miss Tokyo University while she was there. Miss Tokyo University, huh? And I heard she went to one of those elite schools where you could ride the escalator from middle school to university. But she still chose to take the external exam. Isn't that incredible? She's definitely something. By the way, the reason I know her is that we went to the same middle school. I admitted this with a wry smile. Ha! Well, you were always smart, too. The world really is small, huh? Yeah, guess it is. Well, at least now I know your brains weren't a fluke. Stephen gave me a mischievous grin. Matching his grin, I laughed. As we continued chatting, the host announced the start of the entertainment segment. I excused myself and quickly tried to return to my seat, but Kimberly, now holding a microphone, called out to stop me. "Wait a minute, Kevin. What now?" Hearing my name suddenly called out, I felt all eyes in the room shift to me. It was just like middle school all over again. I sighed internally, dreading what was coming next. Oblivious to my frustration, Kimberly pressed on. "You thought you could escape me back in middle school, didn't you? Well, let's see if you can beat me now." This was supposed to be a group puzzle game for everyone, but I decided to change it to a one-on-one match with you. Hey, you can't just change the plans like that. This isn't even your wedding. Oh, don't worry. I got permission from the bride and groom. I glanced over at Stephen, who gave me an overly cheerful smile. Judging by that smile, Stephen is definitely enjoying himself. Suppressing the urge to groan, I sighed audibly. Kimberly, apparently oblivious, continued speaking. "If you can solve this problem in 5 minutes, I'll grant you one wish, anything you want." "A problem?" As I responded, Kimberly handed me a sheet of paper. I glanced at it briefly before sighing again, this time louder. I don't even need 5 minutes. It's already solved. Seriously, what's the point of this? What? No way. You already solved it? Kimberly looked completely stunned, staring at me in disbelief. Kimberly's reaction was so unexpected that I almost burst out laughing. This paper, wasn't it supposed to be part of a random draw game? Did you even know what was written on it when you gave me this problem? Or were you just planning to propose to a random person here? I glanced at her with a mix of amusement and reproach. What? Let me see that. Kimberly, visibly flustered, snatched the paper from my hand and checked it herself. This says. Her eyes darted nervously across the page, clearly struggling to make sense of it. It's in Spanish. Roughly translated, it says, I love you. Marry me now. I said that in a small voice. Immediately, Kimberly's face started turning red. At the same time, the room erupted in soft laughter, and I couldn't help but add, looks like someone set you up, huh? I directed my gaze toward Kimberly's table. Kimberly, now livid, shoved the paper back at me and stormed over to her table. Hey! What's the big idea? Her former classmates sitting there smirked mischievously and shot back. Oh, we just brought your wishes to life. Just because you're rich and pretty, you thought you could have everything your way, huh? Talk about delusional. You didn't even notice everyone laughing at you behind your back. And seriously? You can't even read Spanish? Guess you're not as perfect as you thought, perpetual second-place queen. Kimberly's friends, undeterred by her glare, laughed mockingly one after another. Perhaps she hadn't expected such words from her own friends, and Kimberly clenched her fists and looked down. The tension between them quickly turned the celebratory atmosphere of the venue into something much darker. Stephen, sorry, but I need to step out for a bit. Yeah. Don't worry, I'll handle things here. I quickly excused myself and rushed over to Kimberly, grabbing her hand and leading her out of the room. The host was momentarily bewildered, but as expected of a professional, they quickly regained control and smoothly continued the wedding reception without a hitch. Meanwhile, I left the venue and brought Kimberly to the waiting room. Now alone with me, Kimberly looked down awkwardly, avoiding my gaze. Hey, is that promise still valid? Huh? You know, the one about granting me a wish if I solved the problem. And, while we're at it, mind telling me why you used to bother me so much back in middle school? Not to borrow the words from that earlier proposal, but I couldn't help asking Kimberly. Even though it brings back unpleasant memories, I've always wondered why Kimberly, who was admired so much by everyone around her, chose to focus on me. After staring at me for a moment and taking a deep breath, Kimberly seemed to resign herself and began revealing her past. You probably already know, but I've always been overestimated because of my family background and appearance. Yeah, I figured as much. Whenever I achieved something, people assumed I could do anything. But to me, that was nothing but pressure. I felt like if I admitted I couldn't do something, everyone would abandon me. I was terrified of being seen as a disappointment. So I worked tirelessly to meet their expectations. Sounds like you had it rough. I also had intense pressure from my parents back then, so in a way, I can understand how Kimberly feels. For now, I decided to just listen to Kimberly until she let everything out. You wouldn't understand. At first, I was doing fine after starting middle school, but then you came along and took the top spot, leaving me stuck in second place. I couldn't understand why I couldn't beat you, no matter how hard I tried. I became obsessed with figuring you out. So I followed you around, trying to outsmart you. That explains a lot. But, back then, I was just as desperate. My parents were working so hard to send me to that school. And I couldn't let them down. But, there's more, isn't there? I could tell you were struggling with something else. You're too perceptive. Fine. As I spent time around you, I started to like you. What? You liked me? Her words caught me completely off guard. I stared at her, utterly bewildered. That Kimberly, admired by everyone, upperclassmen, underclassmen, even the teachers, was interested in me? No way. As I silently thought, that can't be true, Kimberly continued to speak. But how could I admit that? We acted like rivals, and I was constantly pestering you. Besides, my friends would say things like, Kimberly has higher standards. There's no way she'd settle for him. He's not even in her league. They made sure I knew my place. So, they were holding you back, too. I didn't want to lose their approval. I knew, deep down, that most of them didn't genuinely like me. The boys only cared about my looks and family. And no one ever tried to understand who I really was. I didn't choose to be born into a rich family, you know. Kimberly's voice trembled as she revealed her insecurities. Hearing her, I couldn't help but remember Andrew's words, having money doesn't guarantee happiness. Am I seriously remembering Andrew's words at a time like this? Did I really let that guy get to me? As the thought crossed my mind, I lightly patted Kimberly's head. Kimberly noticed the scars on my wrist and gasped. Wait, what happened to your wrist? Oh, this? How should I put it, youthful recklessness? Or maybe, you could call it proof that I'm the one left behind. I tried to sound casual, but the weight of the truth made me hesitate. Kimberly, however, wasn't satisfied. She frowned, crossing her arms. Tell me the whole story. I told you everything about myself, didn't I? It's only fair if you do the same. Seeing her pout like that, I sighed and reluctantly opened up about my past. I told her about my family's poverty, my father's company going bankrupt, and how we couldn't afford my high school tuition. I explained how I had lied about my age to take on part-time jobs to support the family. And then, my dad borrowed money from places he shouldn't have, and when he couldn't pay it back. I paused, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Even after all these years, recalling those events made my body tremble. You don't have to say it. Just seeing the scars. I understand what happened. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. But what? If you just told me back then, maybe I could have helped you. Kimberly probably said it without any ill intent, but it was completely off the mark. So, I pointed it out to her. See, that's what I mean. That's your bad habit, unintentionally talking down to people. Did you even realize you just put yourself on a pedestal? Yeah, I was poor, but accepting charity is humiliating, you know? Oh. I didn't mean it like that. Don't worry about it. After all, I ended up relying on a rich guy anyway. I practically sold out to get where I am now. Cutting corners and taking shortcuts along the way. So, I don't really have the right to criticize anyone. But at least I've made peace with who I am, the good and the bad. Nobody's perfect. And you shouldn't force yourself to live up to someone else's ideal version of you. I wasn't sure if my words were encouraging or just clumsy, but it was the best I could manage. He. You're terrible at giving reassurance. Shut up. It's not like I do this often. As she laughed openly, I felt myself sulk a bit in return. You know what? I think I'll stop pretending to be someone I'm not. Good. You'll feel a lot better that way. Thanks, Kevin. It seemed like Kimberly had finally let go of her worries, as she showed me a smile at last. Seeing her smile made my heart skip a beat for a moment, but I quickly hid it and urged her to return to the venue. When we got back, Kimberly marched straight to her friends and bowed deeply. I'm really sorry for everything I've done. I've reflected on my actions, and I want to change. From now on, I want you to see me as I really am. Is that okay? Well, to be honest, we started to think we might have gone a bit too far. We knew that you were working harder than any of us, staying focused and dedicated. But we were just jealous of how you could do anything so effortlessly. So, we're the ones who acted immaturely, and I'm sorry for that." Seeing them apologize to each other, I felt relieved. Having properly expressed their feelings and apologized, Kimberly and the others were now laughing together. Then, to my surprise, Tracy grabbed a microphone and, in her best imitation of a reporter, turned to Kimberly. "So, Kimberly, can we take your earlier confession as your true feelings?" "What, huh?" Yes." Kimberly, though hesitant, gave a small reply and nodded slightly. Her face was as red as a boiled octopus, and seeing this, her friends, amused, turned the microphone toward me next. "And what's your answer to her public proposal, Kevin?" they asked me with sly grins on their faces. When I quickly glanced around, even the bride and groom were smirking, and that's when I realized I'd been set up again. Damn it. I fell for it. Stephen must have orchestrated this while I was gone. I shot Stephen a glare, only to see him smirking at me and giving me a thumbs up. Seeing that I couldn't back out anymore, I had no choice but to reluctantly say okay. Afterward, Kimberly and I exchanged contact information. We went on a few dates, and eventually, we began officially dating with marriage in mind. At that point, I decided it was time to fully disclose my background to Kimberly. "Since we're getting serious, there's something I need to tell you." "Huh? What is it?" "You've been hiding something else from me?" I wouldn't say I was hiding it, but the truth is, I graduated from K University. And I work at Stephen's company, the same Stephen who was the groom at that wedding. K University? And you work at the groom's company? I figured it would come out eventually, so I might as well tell you now. This is the worst. I was so happy thinking I'd finally left you in the dust, and now this? That's just unfair. Kimberly, overwhelmed by frustration, openly pouted. Watching her make such an adorable gesture, I gently patted her head. "Come on, there's no need to compete anymore. You don't have to impress me. You're already amazing, beautiful, and strong just the way you are. What's with that cheesy line all of a sudden? What? Is it bad? I thought it was a pretty good line. You're so not the type to say things like that. It's kind of disappointing." For some reason, Kimberly muttered with a slightly disappointed look. "Oh, you're gonna regret saying that. Stop it." But I guess, we both weren't very honest with ourselves back then. Yeah, no kidding. But what's wrong with being honest now? Nothing at all. I kind of like this version of you. With a satisfied smile, Kimberly looped her arm through mine. Looking back, I once thought my life was the worst. But I found the best friend anyone could ask for, and now I've found the best partner, too. I recalled the words Stephen said back then. You just need to find happiness and prove them wrong. And now, I truly feel happy. I'd built a happiness that surpasses the easy escape my parents chose, a happiness made possible by the people who supported me along the way. I'll protect this happiness, so just watch me. I looked up at the sky and murmured softly. Did you say something? Walking beside her, I silently vowed once again to make Kimberly truly happy.